Uh, Thank you for being here and in this full room. Nice. And we have also the Blessed Sacrament, which is a good companion. And when we are in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament, sometimes we should not talk too long, and we should not distract the people from the most important thing, which is really to be close to Jesus. So let's see what happens. But actually, it's an honor. I was reminded that now you have the Blessed Sacrament normally to help the time of prayer, which I am very happy about. I also have the impression that this reflection about the gospel, I will just focus on the gospel. I already shared it here some time. I don't know, because I have the impression that I shared this reflection before. So if you go to your files, you might find it there. If not, it sounds new for me again. This gospel is very beautiful, and I would really like to make some comments on it. In the gospel, Jesus invites us to learn from his humility. Actually, the topic, if you want, for today is humility. Once I have heard a priest in his homily, and he started his homily disagreeing with Jesus. Sabi niya, in what sense is Jesus humble? If you read carefully the gospel, and this priest gave many other examples, he kept on saying, if we read carefully all the gospels, we will never find any single verse where Jesus assumes he is guilty in something. You will never find in any gospel Jesus saying, sorry, I was wrong. He rather says, I am the truth, I am the life, I am the way. So there are, this is a new perspective, no, of this priest. He started the homily saying this. Should he be speaking to the people? Should he be speaking to the crowds? He says to those who are against him, you cannot find sin in me. Jesus says about himself that he's the master, the Lord, and he's more important than Moses and Abraham. Is this really humble? My goodness. Also, that those who see him are blessed. Blessed are you who see me. Imagine someone, a priest, no, blessed are you, but blessed are your eyes that are seeing me. It does not sound very humble, really. And yet and then even worse, learn from me, because I'm humble of heart. Nobody will say that then. So is Jesus really humble? Because it does not sound like a humble person. How can possible someone say something like this? Learn from me because I'm humble. Well, these remarks, just initial remarks, are not supposed to convince you that Jesus is not humble. I'm just trying to reflect on what is really important in humility. And humility, from what we can see, does not consist in just being small and poor, because it can happen that someone is poor and is small, insignificant, And at the same time, this person can also be arrogant. So that was something that I learned when I joined the missionary life. I was coming from a prominent family, and at the beginning I thought the poor were humble, the rich were. That's sometimes what we have in mind. The rich are arrogant, powerful, they oppress others, and then the poor are oppressed and they are humble, they are meek. Well, it can happen. It's true, it can happen. Many times it can happen. But then in my missionary life, when I start also to have our mission trips and we get in contact with people in poor barangays and poor areas, and then we are also in contact with all kinds of people, I learned that there is a lot of people among the rich who are very, very generous and humble. And there is a lot of people among the poor, they are very arrogant. They are very proud. And they will have a lot of resentments and so on and so on. So we cannot, what I'm trying to say is that you cannot label if someone is humble or not humble by your social condition, by your appearances. You can be very rich and you can be very humble, and the other way around as well. Humility is not about feeling ourselves small, without value. This could rather be a complex of inferiority or an outcome of a false image of our own selves. This could even lead us to depression, self-pity, rather than to humility. Because sometimes there is this false image also of being humble, which is the person who always is in the corner. I will not say anything, I will not appear, I will be very, very discreet, I will not talk, because I'm very humble. And this could even, to be humble is not a synonym of declaring ourselves humble. Not because you say you are humble, you are. It's not about words. Sometimes declaring ourselves humble, not worthy, could be also cultural or just polite or just rhetoric. In the meetings, no. In my humble opinion, I would like to. Well, it's my humble opinion. All of you are wrong. But only in my humble opinion. So again, it's not about to be humble. It's not about social condition. It's not about words. Whatever you say can be rhetoric, can be cultural. There are cultures where people are very extroverted. Other cultures, people are more introverted. This is cultural. There are families, one kind, another kind. So to be humble is not about feeling humble or being insignificant or declaring ourselves like that. So what is all about? So this is what I'm trying to share today. What is humility all about? And if we read the gospel, that's where the gospel comes in, and we find that it is about making ourselves small out of love so that others can grow. So it's not only about ourselves. To be humble always has this component. If I make myself small because I want others to grow, to increase, And this is what Jesus does in his life, to decrease so that others increase. So it's not only to decrease, it's to decrease with the intention that others will increase. This was the humility of Jesus, and this is the humility of the gospel. He, you can find it in the letter to the Philippians and never Filipinos 2, 5 to 11. No? Letter to the Filipinos 2, 5 to 11. It says, he who was in form of God, he who was God, did not regard with God something to be grasped. Rather, he emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, coming in human likeness and found in human appearance, he humbled himself. And in another passage, which is to the Philippians 2:9, he who was rich made himself poor to enrich ourselves. So it's empty, he emptied himself in order to make us richer. And this is why Jesus is totally right when he says, and when he said, learn from me, because I am humble of heart. Learn from me how I emptied myself. Learn from me, I could live as a God. I can use all the powers I had as a God, and I decided to come down and live as a human among yourselves. In that sense, he was humble, because he humbled himself, emptied himself from all the honors he could have received as God. So God actually is the only one who is true humble, because in the position he cannot go higher than himself. There is no one and nothing above him. God can only descend. And that is what he does, and what he has been doing all the time, always descending from his position. When he created the world, he descended. When he was inspiring the Bible, it was quite humiliating, no, because he had to be attached to the human language, and God's language could be much more richer. And when he was inspiring the Bible that is written in our language, it's a kind of descending, like the parents, when they are playing with their kids, they have to descend in their vocabulary. They cannot speak as they articulate as adults, so they reduce their vocabulary and say only few words that the children can understand. And normally they lay on the floor. They are not in a pedestal. They lie on the ground. They play with the kids because they have to descend to be at the same level as the kids. And when we have God, who is the Word himself, no, the Logos, he is the living Word, and he accepted to be attached and to be reduced somehow to human language that is written in the Bible. This is a kind of emptying himself from many other ways he could have communicated. He chose to be attached to this human language. So it tries to adjust to us and make a way of communicating to what us as babies can say or understand. So the history of salvation, the history is the history of the coming down of God, the bending, leaning, inclination, the descent of God the fall of God. We can add, it's the fall of love, the fall of God. In other words, in the history is the history about the humiliation of God, how God humbled himself out of love, just to reach us, and so that we can understand him and receive his message. And that is why San Francis Assisi, what do you say, Assisi, San Francisco de Assis, Assisi. Have you been there? This is a nice pilgrimage. Assisi, the city of peace. That's why Jesus, San Francis to God, he told him, Lord, you are humility. That's sometimes we define God. God is love. Saint Francis Assisi defined God as humility. Who is God? God is humility. That's why in one of his prayers, he compares the humility with water. Because the water always seeks the lowest point. We can experience this in our houses, diba? The water always seeks the lowest point, so the lowest level. Blessed are you, Lord, for sister water, because she is very useful and humble. She is precious and pure. That's the prayer of Saint Francis. Because the water always goes down, and then there is humidity in the houses. The water always goes down. Water doesn't stop moving until she finds the lowest level. This is what humility should be about. We should not stop until we find the lowest level at the level of the people. The contrary is the vapor, smoke. You say vapor, vapor. In Spanish, there is an expression when we want to say that someone is a bit blind because of his or her pride. We say this expression. Well, I try to translate it literally. Is the smoke went to his head? No. Like the vapor, it's empty. So the water goes down to the lowest level. This is humility. And then the vapor goes up, and then it's nothing. So le han subido los humos. That's what we say in Spanish. The smoke went to his head. That's why when we graduate, we put the toga so that the people will not see the smoke. The toga, because very probably the smoke is going into the head, and then so we put the toga so that we all appear humble. It's a very good expression. I only understand after studying San Francis, because really I did not understand why that expression, but it's in the counterpart of water vapor. So, but the difference is that the water is very rich, nourishes the soil, and the vapor becomes nothing. Empty. And very empty. Sometimes people criticize the gospel and the Christians to have introduced in the world the sickness or the illness of humility, actually. According to some people, the humility that the gospel proposes is an enemy of the will and power in doing things. Because we understand wrongly what is humility. So, but if we understand correctly what is humility, we come to the conclusion that far from depressing the human being, humility lifts human beings up. Humility is healthy for the human beings. it makes them more authentic and trustful. And the fruits of power, we can all see what are the results before our eyes. We can see every day in the news the fruits of pride and wars to prove who is the stronger. And before our eyes, we have wars, we have violence, we have famine. And actually, Pope Benedict XVI, he was the one saying, man feels very powerful to start wars, but then none of them can, to start wars, but none of them has the power to stop the wars. Because pride blinds you in such a way, you get blind and you cannot control it. It's stronger than you. You have not control of yourself. And so these wars, nobody can stop them because pride is there. And no one will give up. No one will give up. Only is, so we feel very powerful to start wars, but nobody has the power to stop them. And this is how humility and pride act. Santa Teresa of Avila said, humility is to live in the truth. The word homo is from the same family. Well, the word homo is the word where man and woman come from, at least in our language, hombre. Is from the same family of the word humilitas. So homo, it's a cousin, same as a relative from humilitas. And both of them come from the same root, which is humus. Humus means ground, means lupa, means earth. The humble one is the one who has his feet on the ground, who knows that he or she comes from the dust, and that he and she will return to the dust. That's where we come from. We are made of the dust of stars. We are made of the dust of stars, and we will become dust. We don't need to study a doctorate or a master's to know that we come from dust and we will become dust. This is no need to have graduation for this. It's very clear, and a humble person should have his or her feet on the ground. This is the truth. That's why Santa Teresa said, the humble one is the one who lives in the truth. This is the truth. Is the one who doesn't think that he is more just because people praise him. And also is the one who doesn't think he is less because people reject him or don't praise him. To be humble is to be poor in spirit. It's just, I am who I am before God's eyes. And I am not what people say from me. If they praise me, I will not believe it. If they reject me, I will not believe it. Because I know who I am before God's eyes. That's my identity. So I'm not depending on what people will say about me. And this is what humility gives us, to know what is really our identity. What do you have that you don't have received? And if you have received it, why do you boast of it? It's really, if we start to see all what we have, today we woke up, we can see, we can breathe, we can smile, we can. This is because we received the gift of life. We did not do anything. more than those people who cannot see, cannot hear, who cannot walk, we did not make anything better than them. We just received a gift. If we received it, why should we boast of it? Today we are beautiful, tomorrow we're not so beautiful, today we are here, tomorrow we are not there. It's why should we boast of the things that we just received them? Our own property, the only property we have is our own sin. This is really ours, it's nobody else's. This is really what we have. This is what we have. And all other things we receive by the grace of God. That's the only our made in myself or made in our own sin. This is our own property. So to be humble or to become humble is a journey. It is not spontaneous. Normally, life and time are the best coaches and the best teachers to help us to become humble. Actually, when we join the formation in our own congregations, I think the only goal is that the person becomes humble. This should be, it's a bit the contrary of many other human courses or careers, that the more we practice, the more we know, the more honors we have, the more we go higher, the more that's in the business world or in the corporate world or in the professional world is like this. To have more, but in religious life, the impression is that the more we practice, the less we know, the more we try, the less we feel confident, the more we try to control, the more we realize we cannot control anything. And many artists are like this. The true artists that have to sing or perform in a stage, they will always have the impression that they are always trembling before any performance, even if they have 50 years of experience. These are the really true artists that perform, and because they know it's depending on so many factors that they don't control and they cannot command. And those who are very confident of themselves, they never have doubts. They are so confident. These people, maybe they are lacking a bit of this knowledge of inspiration, because they are totally confident in their own, and they forget that they can lose their capacities. So that's why in religious life we try to practice, we should practice this a lot. We have examples of this in formation course. Examples of formation is not a matter of adding things, but rather taking out things that we don't need. Examples of struggling to preach and so on and so on. I am convinced that the greatest obstacle to preach is pride, lack of humility. This is where we start. It's not because people say, no, I don't know how to preach, I don't know how to give it. But I observe you are talking all the time. You talk a lot. So it's just because it's not about preaching, it's about talking. It's just talking. No, I'm very shy, but then there is karaoke, and you don't give the microphone to anyone else. No, I'm very shy. I cannot. And then when we have karaoke sessions, this person will not give the microphone to anyone else. It's always singing. I thought you said you are shy. So it's so relative, we say Filipinos are shy, the Australians are not. So, but the Australians will not sing karaoke with easily, not so easy as the Filipinos. So don't say don't know how to talk, you don't know, because in your family, when you have to defend your position, there is one option, and then you have to talk about the reason. You are a very good preacher. You are a very good preacher. You really know how to say things and to organize the ideas and to like the Spanish bullfights, no? And then in the end, ta-da, they killed the bull. So you know very well. So I only can, when I see people with a lot of difficulties to preach, which for me, I don't think we have to preach, we just have to talk. Just to talk, it's not the preaching. I find there is this problem of pride, lack of humility. The day we accept ourselves as we are, and we are not afraid of what others say, that day you will be free. Because what stops us is when what other people will say. This is that it stops us from sleeping. That's why don't tell me 1 month before, just tell me 3 days before. Because if you tell me that I have to give my guidelines 1 month before, it will be 1 month of non-sleep. So better just 3 days. Because okay, so that's I have problems. I don't want to disturb your sleep. So just the day before is the best because we sleep well. So well, let's move on. Yeah. So what do we have to do in order to become, because this is a journey, to become more humble, or in order to descend and come down from our pride? Shall we always seek the small things and give up the big ones? Shall we renounce to be ambitious and to do great works? I don't think so. Because Jesus said to his disciples, if you want to be the first ones, you should be the last ones and serve everyone. Meaning to say, it's okay if you want to be the first one. It's licit, it's allowed in the bawal. It's licit to aspire to be the first one. It's not forbidden to aim it. Actually, that was and that is always what makes science, sports, and great invents progress. It's the secret of the progress, this human spirit that fights to be better and better, to do things better and better, to be the best and to be the first. This is inherent of the human spirit. And Jesus is not saying, take this out of you. He's saying, if you want to be the first one, so he's not preventing you to be the first one. What he asks is, what do you do out of it? What Jesus means by being humble is, with all that you are and with all that you achieve, serve others. So he's not saying don't achieve great things. He's not saying don't be the best. Never. Just stay in the corner. Don't do anything that will make you remarkable. No, he's saying do your best. Be the number one in the class. Be the number one in your job. Be the number. But then he says, and then when you achieve this, what do you do with this? Serve others with the power you have. Serve others with the authority you have. Serve others with all that you achieve. Put it at the service. So it's not like annulling our personality, our talents. He's not saying you should not have talents, you should not be good. No, it's what do you do with that? That's what he says, no? Mark 9:35, it's an example of it. Actually, this is what the good parents do with their children. They would sacrifice themselves so that their children become better than they are and go further than they did. There are a lot of examples in family business of these, children go beyond, and the parents are happy because of them. The journey towards humility is not the one where there are some who are the winners and others who are the losers. In the end, all of us win. All of us are elevated. The one who is served and the one who is serving feels that they gain something with it. By serving others, I am not supposed to humiliate them. And this is very important. Sometimes the way we serve others may humiliate the person who is served, depending on how we do it. But the father of the prodigal son served him without humiliating him. The prodigal son did not feel undermined. Some ways of helping people could be extremely offensive when they are extremely paternalist. When we are serving others, the first thing is to try to find out what are really the needs. If you really want to serve someone, find out what the person needs. And just don't assume that you know what he or she needs. I always give this example, no? Once in Germany, there was a parish, they wanted to, how do you call it, hermanar, to befriend or to be of a parish in a country in Africa. So the parish council of this German parish, they were all very generous. They were very motivated to help this new parish sister, no, parish brother. And so they had a meeting. How will we help them? What are we ready to give to them? And then they make their own reflection, and they decided to buy an ambulance and send the ambulance. That's what they found as the most useful thing for that parish. And then they did it. They have the means, they bought it, they send it, they ship it to this country. But when the parishioners of the African parish receive it, they look at each other and say, we don't have hospital. And so we have an ambulance, we don't have hospital. And we don't have roads for this kind of ambulance. There are no roads, no asphalt, nothing. And so here we have a very generous offer, but not situated, a bit paternalist, meaning to say not situated in the real needs of the people. Did you ask what they need? And this is, even in the life of Saint Ignatius, he once told one story about this when he found that he has to follow Jesus in poverty, so he gave up his clothes. He was a very rich man. He was a noble man, beautiful clothes, very expensive. And he gave his clothes, he wear in a sack, make penance, and then gave the clothes to this poor man who was begging. And after 2 hours, the police came, the police beat him up because thought that he has stolen the St. Ignatius damit, no? Damit. So he wanted to do it so generous, and in the end, he put this person in a problem, no? Because he was beaten up by the guards because the guards thought that he has stolen his. So, sometimes the way we have, or in our minds that we want to help people, starting from our own criteria, what we think. But really, humility should bring us down to the level of the people and to see and to experience what are really their needs. And that's why Mother Teresa Calcutta, she said, I don't work for the poor, I work with the poor because I am one of them. And this is different, no? To work for the poor, to work with the poor, because I feel one of them. I'm in their community. And this is for me a very beautiful example. And a retreat master, another example of humility, no? A bishop has to define what is a retreat, and he said, to give a retreat is just to tell people where someone is distributing food. You are not the one. So I am just telling you where there is food. And this is another example of living mission with humility. So to be humble is not to be passive in front of injustice. The one who is truly humble, he will fight against injustice because he's not afraid of what might happen to him if he fights or if he tells the truth. Again, if someone is humble, he's not afraid because I know what is my reality. He's free from himself. He or she is not selfish. It's different to fight with a solidary spirit or with a spirit of fighting against enemies, which is common, for example, in politics. So the one who is humble is fighting, but not because he has enemies and wants to fight against his enemies, those who think differently from him, fighting for justice. And the most beautiful fruit, and this is the last point of the gospel, the most beautiful fruit of being humble, I would say, that is the one that Jesus talks about in this gospel. Only the humble ones will be able to receive the revelation of God himself. Matthew 11:25-30. Does it mean that the gospel is unfriendly to intelligent people or wise persons? To wise people or to intelligent people? Of course not. The little one, because Jesus says, I appreciate you, Father, because you have hidden these things from the intelligent and from the wise, and you only reveal them to the humble and the little ones. What does it mean? The little ones and the poor ones, who according to Jesus are those, the ones to whom God reveals himself, are not necessarily in contradiction with intelligence and wisdom. They are the contrary of pride. The gospel does not condemn science, does not condemn wisdom, does not condemn intelligence, erudition, does not condemn it. It condemns arrogance. It condemns pride and arrogance. And this is what Jesus means by it. And this is exactly what we do. I think we are in perfect harmony with God's feelings. To whom do we trust our secrets? To whom do we trust our problems? To those we see they are not arrogant. To those whom we see they are discreet, they are humble, they have capacity to listen to us and to be quiet. So if we do this, we should not be surprised that God also would only reveal his secrets and his intimacy to the humble. This is what we do already in our lives. We will not share our own problems and secrets to someone who is a bit arrogant. We prefer to share it with humble people. So why would God be different? He is like this. Pride and arrogance damage and ruins even the most handsome people and the most beautiful things. For example, physical beauty and human intelligence without humbleness convert people in a ridiculous person. This person is so beautiful, but I mean, his attitude, it ruins everything. They lose their spark and become more ridiculous than admired. And the contrary is also true. People not so handsome and not so intelligent become beautiful when they are humble, like the saints, for example. There are so many saints. They're not so beautiful, but they are so beautiful. They are attractive because humility attracts. There is some kind of attraction there. And that is the beauty of God. So to become more humble is to become more beautiful, no matter age. And there are exercises for that, not only in the gym. There are exercises also for humility that we cannot find in the gym. There is also a spiritual gym, accepting little observations about ourselves, which are not so pleasant at the moment, without being devastated or depressed immediately. So if something makes an observation about you, don't be immediately depressed, or don't be defensive, or don't counter-attack immediately. The truth is that we will never be able to become humble without going through some humiliations. And life teaches us this. There are some humiliations that we don't like to go through them, but in the long term, they make us more humble, accept our limitations, and not having a problem without our limitations. Many examples of that could be given. Let's learn from Jesus to be humble, for he is the humble one. And when we reach there, the promise is we will have peace and we will rest, which is not the same to rest in peace. No. We will rest, we will be at peace, we will be less burdened, because the biggest burden comes from pride, not accepting limitations, and that's why Jesus said, learn from me, and your burden will be released. Amen.